When you dare to share, you break the silence. When you dare to share, you speak your truth. When you dare to share, you use the full strength of your voice. When you dare to share, it brings opportunity to own your story. So tell it, be heard, and at the same time, your sharing is someone else's learning, inspiration, motivation, empowerment, and hope. There's always an element to each of our stories that remains a secret. For some, we feel it's a dirty little secret. Dare to share your untold story exposes these secrets in a welcoming and positive way. I encourage each of you out there to dare yourself to share what is yours to tell. When we dare, it is the courage to do something really important. Let this be a vow to each and every single one of us that we take risk, we brave, confront, and face what is, while inspiring and empowering all communities. So let's break that silence and tap into mental beauty. This is Salima Jadabji, your podcast host, a practicing social worker, and your mental wellness connoisseur. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast, episode number 56, The Exclusion Experience and Emerging Out from the Suppressed Voice. To all my fellow listeners, before we get started, I'm just dropping in a note to give you a heads up that this podcast might be emotionally triggering for you. We do invite guests onto the show who share openly about extremely difficult life moments with exposure and impact of what the struggles have been like. The intensity of each episode could have a variable impact on your emotional and mental well-being based on your own personal story. If at any point the topic becomes uncomfortable or upsetting to you in any way, please do not pressure yourself to listen. Instead, be kind to yourself, do some self-care, and perhaps give another episode a try. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing our courageous and daring guest, Tanya Reynolds. Tanya is the owner of Ready Now Live Coaching, which services women who are pivoting in their career, empowering them to step into new or more aligned opportunities boldly and confidently. She is a professional coach, a certified organizational change manager, and a technology professional with over 24 years experience navigating the corporate world in one of the largest financial institutions in Canada. Tanya is an author and co-creator and co-facilitator of the Slay Your Inner Critic confidence and self-esteem building programs for teens, adult women, and men. She has created the Ready Now Rise Youth Program, which focuses on helping Black, Indigenous, and people of color youth prepare to enter the workplace through self-discovery of their superpowers and their personal brand. She helps to prepare these individuals by guiding them to build their resume and prepare for interviews so they may feel empowered and prepared for their next opportunity. Her favorite roles in life are being a mother to a very energetic little girl and a wife to her supporting and loving husband. Well, hello, Tanya. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast.
Hello, how are you? And thank you for having me.
Oh my goodness. Tanya, I am pleased to have you on the show today, and I am absolutely grateful for your willingness to tell your story. I'm continually encouraged when I am met with guests who really allow me to draw from strength and support and inspiration, from the stories that are shared on this platform. And so my belief is that it is important that we take a stance together to help break barriers of mental stigma.
Thank you for this opportunity. I think it's a great platform that you've created to allow individuals to tell their story, because we've got a lot to share, and sometimes we don't have that platform or that space to share our stories. So thank you.
I'm glad you see it that way, that we have a lot to share. That's encouraging for me, for sure. And Tanya, in case you're still wondering, or if other listeners are still wondering, this podcast is really about bringing forward untold stories that people go through, whether directly about a mental health struggle or something else. And one thing we know is that no matter what the story is, there is impact to one's own mental health in some way, which remains tucked away. So this platform, it really serves as a way to break those barriers of mental stigma that have been conditioned in our society. So I'm hopeful that today, Tanya, with your contribution, together we can continue to encourage people to allow themselves permission to share and tell what individuals typically have reservations for expressing. And of course, I continue to bring forward a trend. It's called the mental beauty rethink. Tanya, what comes to your mind immediately when you hear the phrase the mental beauty rethink?
Being in a place of peace and calmness. And that is
Mm,
the norm. Think about that day that you're looking fine and you look at yourself in the mirror, you're like, oh, I feel peaceful. I feel good. I look good. I'm calm. I'm confident. Imagine staying in that place permanently or most of the time. That's what I think of when I hear the mental beauty rethink.
that is so refreshing to hear. What a great insight. Ah, I love it. I really, really love it. I like what you said, place of peace and calmness as the norm. How cool is that?
Yeah. Can you imagine?
Yeah, I almost wanted to close my eyes and be like, am I closing my eyes? Am I looking in the mirror? What's happening? It really resonated, and I actually started to feel when you were saying the words, I was like, "I feel peace. I feel calm too. Yes,
Yeah.
this is good." Really, really love it. Such a great take on it. It really excites me when I get to hear guests sharing about their take and their perspective on mental beauty. There are so many rich interpretations, and I really enjoy how these words interlace into so many themes that people have been able to bring forward and bring to my attention. It's just lovely. It's lovely to be able to get everyone's perspective, and yours is very much appreciated. Thank you. So, I'm itching to get started, Tanya. How are you feeling about this?
I'm excited.
Okay.
Excited.
Okay. There was a bit of pause there before the word excited, but I'm going to just take your word for
I'm
it.
smiling. You can't see me, but I'm smiling.
Okay. Okay. I feel the smiling now. I feel it in the voice. All right. Okay, Tanya, give us the newspaper headline of how you would title your untold story. How would it read?
Fear to fierce.
Fear to fierce. Okay, like that's loaded.
Okay, so that's recognizing that the suppression of your voice or of my voice led me to a place of fear. And then thinking about losing my voice and the journey to getting it back. And now it's being fierce. Like you cannot shut me up. Like I have found the voice and I'm good.
You found it, and you're good, and you're fierce, and it was a journey.
Exactly.
And so fear to fierce, it's like talking about a process, right? There's like a process there. I'm hearing you inch towards.
Definitely a process, consciously or
Yeah.
subconsciously. It was actually that's what it was.
Hmm. Okay, Miss Tanya, tell us what your untold story is all about. Give us the lowdown.
So I would say maybe 20 years ago, joining the corporate world, very happy. I was on my path to being a police officer and realized like guns and dead bodies were not in my future. And
Right.
so joining the corporate world as a young woman, as a young Black woman, taking on a role where it was dominated by a lot of alpha males. And so during that time losing my ability to communicate, like not just, oh, I can't think of what to say, like physically muted and losing that ability to speak in meetings, to have an opinion, just you name it, I
Mm.
experienced it. So it's really about the journey of getting my voice back and being able to use it to help other women who may be experiencing the same thing.
So tell me something, Tanya. You say getting my voice back. So are you telling me that you had a voice and then it disappeared?
Had a voice and then it disappeared. And it disappeared in the figurative way. So you could still hear me, but you weren't hearing me.
So paint a picture. So what was like the Tanya like who had a voice? How did she show up in the world? What was she like?
Vibrant, Vibrant, loud, happy, not shying away from being on a platform. I remember in grade 8, I was valedictorian, and like that carried through to high school and to college. Just being that outgoing individual that
Mhm.
was fearless, really.
Mm. So you were fearless. What an interesting journey that you were fearless and then somehow fear grabbed a hold of you. Really interesting.
I like the way you describe that because that's exactly how it felt. It just grabbed a hold of me and didn't
Hmm.
let go for many years.
Hmm. And so, can you tell me more about what you think contributed to that loss of a voice during that period?
I think I was young and really not understanding how to communicate in certain settings. Being young, being the only one of very few females in this
Mhm.
role, being a Black female, you had this fear that you had to be on your best behavior all the time. And that best
Mhm.
behavior also meant not talking back, not speaking up.
Mhm.
Microaggression is a word that we now know because of what's happened in
Mhm.
the world. At
Yes.
that young age, if something was said to me, I knew it was wrong. I knew it didn't feel right, but there was no word that I knew back then to be able to say, oh, okay, this is what's happening to me. It was just, I got to stay on a very clean path, don't complain, just keep going. And eventually my voice just got smaller and smaller and smaller.
Mhm. So your voice got smaller and smaller. What did it look like when it was the smallest?
So emotionally, it was hard. It was almost like losing myself, and it transcended into other areas of my
Mhm.
life. So, in the
Mhm.
workplace, I couldn't be myself. I couldn't say what I wanted to say. I couldn't
Mhm.
find those words to, if you had an idea, it's like I would open my mouth and nothing would come out, right? And that transcended into my relationships, not being able to ask
Mhm.
for what I wanted. It transcended into my family, not being able
Mhm.
to express myself. And then in reflecting that, when I looked at the women in my life, that's what they experienced as well. My grandmother was a
Mhm.
beautiful woman, um, but never spoke her mind, right? And
Mhm.
and she
Mhm.
she had throat cancer. So
Mhm.
in my mind, that was the result of keeping everything
Mhm.
and suppressing
Mhm.
her voice.
Yeah, tell me what you know about throat cancer and keeping your voice small and the development of a physical illness in the throat area. What do you know about this?
So from my own experience during that period, and I could probably tell
Mhm.
you the exact moment, although I know
Mhm.
experts would say you can't. But during that period, I developed Graves' disease, and that's an autoimmune disease that
Right.
impacts your thyroid, which is at the base of your neck. And so I equated that to the physical ailments that came with losing your voice, losing my voice. I can't get the words out. My body's under stress. And, at the time, it was something that probably was dormant in my body, and stress brought it out.
Mm.
Right. So now you're like dealing with the physical stress and you're dealing with like the emotional stress. And all it is just that inability to speak.
Mm. And so, for how long did you go on like that?
I would say that that took place for a good 3 years. It took a good
Really?
3 years for
3
me.
years,
Yeah.
36 months.
Yeah. It took a good 3 years for me to figure out, okay, what do I need to do to get back to myself? And then along with not having a voice came that need to continuously prove myself. So if I'm going to be mute and I'm not going to contribute, I'm going to better myself, So I'm going to go back to school and I'm going to learn a new
Mhm.
skill and I'm going to finish that skill and I'm going to learn a new skill because this
Mhm.
fear around not having this voice was, oh, I'm going to lose my
Mhm.
job because I'm not speaking. And so it was
Mhm.
always, my driver to, okay, what can I do next to make sure that I keep my job, to make sure that as I worked on myself, I was still a valuable asset to the organization or to the team, or I was contributing in some way.
Right. So this idea that you had to be perfect, you had to find a way to be of value to people was to externally make sure you showed up that way.
Right.
So I'm curious about something. If we can back up for something you said a moment ago. So you mentioned, okay, 3 years, it was a 3 year period. And then it took you time to figure out what you needed to get back to yourself. So what was the moment where you made the connection that my voice is so small and I need to do something about it? This has been 3 years and it needs to stop. What took place?
I think I was in a meeting and we were brainstorming, and again, very quiet. And I'm sure you've experienced this before where you have an idea in your mind and someone says it. And in
Hmm.
this
Hmm.
particular meeting, it was multiple times that I was in my mind having the dialogue. Oh, we should definitely try this and we should explore that. And somebody would say it. And then it was like, you have what you need. You just need
Hmm.
to find your voice to be able to communicate and get back on
Hmm.
your feet.
So that was your moment of realization
That
that,
was like my aha. It's like
yeah,
the constant searching for, what do you need? When are you going to be good enough?
right.
That was my aha moment where it's like, you are good enough. You really just need to
Mhm.
be able to find your voice, articulate it, and move forward.
So how do you remind yourself on a regular basis now that you are good enough?
I love that. Um, many ways. I do my affirmations. Like, even as a coach, I'm very transparent. We still have to do the work because that inner critic comes up,
Mhm.
when you're least expected.
Oh,
So,
she can be
yeah,
fierce. There's a fierceness in fear too, right? And we need to make sure that that's clear in your mind, that the fierceness of fear doesn't bleed into the actual fierceness that you've sort of developed for yourself to conquer and move away from those maladaptive ways of thinking and feeling and being.
exactly. Exactly.
Mhm.
And I think that's why coaching is my passion, because I think of
Mhm.
that time where there was really no one there to tell me differently. There was
Mm.
no one to say,
Mhm.
you are enough. Look what you've accomplished. And then in my mind, I'm like, there are other women out there who are experiencing this, right? We
Mhm.
need to get them to be fierce as well. This is why coaching for me aligns so well, because it's like, I want to prepare you for your next step,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And understanding your superpowers and understanding what you're good at. Once you know that, nobody can take your voice away.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it's such a powerful epiphany. It must have become so real when you really allowed yourself to reflect and process and have those new dialogues with yourself.
Definitely. And a lot of mindset shift, right?
Yeah.
Just recognizing where you are, changing the language that you speak about yourself,
Mhm.
changing the people
Mhm.
you surround yourself with, and
Yeah.
understanding when they're saying something that's
Mhm.
making you feel bad about yourself, right? So just
Mhm.
bringing more awareness to your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you talk about this theme, the microaggressions and feeling excluded and having to work with alpha males in that corporate environment and the inner critic, showing up boldly and the suppressed voice. And you talk about you've made some real good connections with how it was showing up in that environment. And you touched upon a little while ago about how it did transcend in all your other relationships. Can you speak to the other relationships a little bit? Like, so when you say it showed up, with whom?
Well,
What did you notice?
Well, I would say it showed up in my personal relationships,
Yeah.
and it's something has gone wrong, or I'm not getting what I know that I deserve, and just not being able to communicate that
Can you give an example?
in my relationships with friends or with a partner. If they're not communicating well with me, or they're not treating me the way I wanted to be treated, then I wouldn't say anything. I would just accept it.
So you're accepting what you don't desire.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And then how did that make you feel?
Oh, again, not good enough, or this is what I deserve. Like,
Mm. You went from not good enough to saying to yourself, I guess this is what I deserve.
this is my destiny.
Oh, this is my destiny.
I don't have a voice. I can't correct
Mhm.
this. And so I guess this is how it's going to be.
I can't correct this, so I'll just embrace it.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, because you have to remember at that time as well, now Graves' disease is in full effect. Also battling with that, it was tough to navigate, okay, how do I compartmentalize this lack of voice? How do I connect it to Graves' disease? How do I fix it and how do I address it? Like there was just so many elements going on at that time that
Mhm.
it was almost like I had lost the fight in
Mhm. Mhm.
myself.
Mm, I see. Earlier, when we first started chatting, at some point when you were introducing your story, you talked about how you learned how your grandma also didn't have a voice and, she battled with throat cancer and you talked about how all the stress that was brought out and she wasn't speaking up for herself. Once you got in touch with recognizing that you had a suppressed voice and this is something that you had to battle with, you also mentioned how other women in your family had also a suppressed voice or had experience with this. Did you start having open conversations with them? Did anything change in the dynamics once you started to relearn about getting your voice back and taking charge of that voice? Did you start having discussions and conversations?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of conversations with, my mom and trying to understand, how we got this way. I mean, we're from a Caribbean family. We know that as kids, we're seen and not heard. Some of that does not go away as you get older, and so my
Mm,
grandmother's from
mm,
that era where you're seen and not heard. And also you take care of other people before you take care of yourself. Trying to get to the root of why we're like this. There's so many reasons, but I understood the foundation, and in my mind, I thought to myself, I needed to go a different path for myself,
building a new foundation.
building a new foundation, breaking the cycle.
Mm. And did any other women in your family also decide to build a new foundation and break the cycle?
Yes, definitely my mom. My mom is a pillar of strength, really found her own voice, carved out her own path for herself, moved away from this idea that we need to stay quiet and we need to
Mm.
like not rock the boat. I've also got a brilliant sister who
Mm.
also, was on that path. And so I think together we fought that battle, but at
Mhm.
different times, but landed in the same spot. And I think that as I reflect back, it wasn't that they were just alpha males. It was me
Mhm.
not understanding how to navigate through that. Because you get that environment anywhere, but it's not knowing how to navigate.
You didn't have the skills.
Yeah,
So
right.
now you're in an unfamiliar territory and you don't have the skills. So you didn't
Exactly.
have the right equipment to then be able to navigate that, right? That's like if you're gonna go scuba diving, right? You need your scuba gear. And if you're gonna go
Exactly.
down in the water, you're not gonna make it.
Exactly.
You're gonna need to come up quicker. You're gonna run out of oxygen. It's not possible to manage that without right gear, without the right
Exactly.
equipment, right? So there's no blame being placed outwardly. I'm not hearing you say that if that's what you're worried about. I'm hearing it that, everyone has their own contributions and can influence your mood and your thoughts. And that's how our stories and narratives sometimes get started in terms of being created. And then we start believing them without checking out the facts at some points.
Mhm.
And so people can definitely contribute to our experience. I'm hearing you boldly, loud and clear tell me that I didn't know how to function in this way.
Mhm.
I had a different cultural upbringing. I flourished and I had this bold and wonderful, outgoing, enthusiastic, energetic personality that allowed me to be free. But then there's these environments that were so new to me, right? Because that's something you said right at the beginning.
Yep.
I was new, I was really young in the field.
Mhm.
And then you were not just new and young, as you mentioned, you were female in a corporate sector where there weren't as many females. And then being a woman of color, right? So you had all these added pieces and you
Mhm.
didn't have the skills. Some of them are soft skills, but some of them are skills that we were never exposed to, knowing that they had to be learned.
Right.
You didn't even know there were skills that needed to be learned. That's what I'm hearing you tell me.
Mhm. That's exactly it. You didn't know
Okay.
that they needed to be learned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that was a thing, right?
Yeah,
Like it's
exactly.
That's what I'm hearing you say. So hopefully I got that. So I have a question. So when people come to see me for therapy, Tanya, individuals, they're typically in like one of three places. Some people are getting started in their journey to like discover themselves and figure out, what parts they want to start working on, or how they need to like navigate a situation. Some people are in the middle where they're in the thick of something, maybe something acute, and they're in a different sorting journey. Or some people are looking back, either trying to gain closure, they're trying to move forward, they're trying to build a new chapter in their life, and they're recognizing what some of their unfinished business is. So, my question here is, what part of the journey would you say that you are in? Would you say that you are getting started, in the middle, or looking back?
I would say I'm in two places. I would say I'm in the middle, and I would say I'm looking back. And I would say I'm looking back because I'm still refer to those experiences as part of my
Mhm,
coaching. And I'm very aware that people still experience that today.
mhm,
All right.
mhm,
And I do have to draw on those experiences in order to help people. So in that way, I'm looking back, and in the middle
mhm.
of it, I just think that it's also that awareness again, because
Maintaining your awareness of
exactly.
life and the trials and tribulations and the different pieces that come up in your journey to
Right,
date.
right, and
Mhm.
navigating it, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
it's being aware and also learning how to navigate through it, and
Mhm.
also using those skills that you've learned over the years to make sure that you don't lose your voice again. I don't lose my voice again.
Yeah. And so what do you do to ensure that you don't lose your voice again? What do you remember? Like, there's gotta be like a remembering toolkit that you have for like making sure that this area stays clean. What do you do?
I consistently look for opportunities to step out of my comfort zone.
Ah, okay.
I consistently raise my hand to do something that I haven't done before. It's almost like I'm always on my toes because I'm always trying to reach for
Mhm,
that opportunity to
mhm,
use my voice and not fall back. I surround myself with individuals who are positive and who are also on the same journey.
mhm, mhm,
And
mhm,
then I continue to empower as many individuals as I can to say, hey, you have it. It's yours. You own it.
mhm.
Don't lose it.
Mm, that's beautiful. So that's really pivotal for you. I'm sure, like, if you're reminding yourself of those things, that must keep you on track for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. You're always striving, right? Part of that story was, this desire to continuously get those certificates and get the additional education and the additional experience, and then eventually burning out, to be honest.
And at some point, you must have realized that it doesn't matter how many credentials or certificates or certifications I have, there's more to it than just accumulating this. You must have had a moment there.
Definitely. In my family, we had an aunt who was not taking care of herself, loved to take care of other people, and was
Mm.
not taking care of herself. Long story short, we brought her to emergency. Dropped her off on a Thursday. We picked her up on a Tuesday. Somewhere in between there, she experienced a stroke and was never the same person.
Oh my
And for
goodness.
the longest time, I was like, how can somebody who loved other people so much not love herself or not take care of herself? And it
Mm,
was like an epiphany for me because I was doing the
mhm,
exact same thing, this
mhm,
chasing and running. And, sometimes I'm very ambitious and I set goals for myself, and I would get that paper or I would get that achievement, and it was like nothing to me. And so I was
mm.
burning myself out.
You never even slow down to celebrate the victories
Exactly.
along the way.
Right.
Holy moly.
That experience sort of made me take a step back and think about, okay, well, what is it that I want for myself? Right? Do I want to be
Mm,
going down the same path, or do I want to
mhm,
start seeing the amazing things that I've accomplished in the last X amount of
mhm,
years? And that I can accomplish going forward without running myself into the ground.
mhm. You became super aware of what burnout would look like and looks like, and you took your aunt's journey and you looked at your own and you saw the parallels and what you could do differently.
Definitely.
Okay. So, Tanya, I'm curious about how your untold story has affected your mental health. We talk about all the different experiences that you had being in these new environments and your narrative and the experience of microaggressions and exclusions and the voice that was there and then it was gone and having to find your way back to it and claiming this fierceness that you have in your present day. But at the time, if you can recall, how was your mental health affected?
It had a big impact. It had a big impact on the way I saw myself. It created a narrative of not being good enough constantly, which resulted in striving for, I wouldn't say perfection, to be honest, but just, I actually don't even know what I was striving for.
Were you just trying to like, prove yourself and show people your worth outwardly? Like, see me, I'm worthy of your time. I'm worthy of your. Was it anything like that?
I think it was definitely trying to prove myself because you just felt like you were not good enough.
Hmm.
So, and then the inner critic, imposter syndrome, like you name it, like
Hmm.
that was the experience at that time. Yeah, and that's where I sat for many years until I was able to say, okay, now I need to get it back because this is not the person who I am,
Hmm.
who I have been.
Hmm.
And so I need to get my ish together.
Hmm. Hmm. And what emotions do you remember experiencing at the time?
A lot of sadness and a lot of fear.
Okay.
Definitely a lot of fear. Fear consumed me.
Mm. You're consumed by it. Do you feel like you missed opportunities because of the suppressed voice?
Yes, 100%. Job opportunities,
Mm.
opportunities to move up. It's almost like it was paralyzing. I think that's the only way I can describe it.
Okay, so tease that out for us. When you tell me paralyzing, I think of not being able to move, right? So tease that out for me.
So it's not being able to speak. It's
Okay.
what are your thoughts on this? And I have no thoughts on it. I can't respond to you because I'm afraid it's going to sound dumb. I'm afraid that people are going to laugh. I'm afraid that it's not going to resonate.
Lots of worry thoughts and lots of self-doubt.
Definitely. Just think about even yourself. Like, I mean,
Mhm.
can you imagine not being able to say what you want to say? You have it in you, but you can't get the words out.
So now, when we talk about fear in the therapy world, and not just in the therapy world, but we talk about the fear response or the stress response, and we talk about fight, flight, or freeze. So you talk about feeling a lot of fear and being consumed by fear. Would you say that losing your voice and feeling it being suppressed and not being able to get it out, would you say that you were frozen, like you were numb?
You could say that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you could find all the adjectives to
Mhm.
describe not being able to express yourself. And I know a listener base will resonate, because it's you're not being able to, you don't feel free. We talked
Mhm.
about the mental beauty rethink, and
Mhm.
you don't feel at peace, you don't feel calm. That's not,
Mhm.
that wasn't the norm.
Mm. You didn't feel peace or calmness. What about grounded? Did you feel grounded at all?
No,
So were you like walking on eggshells all the time?
constantly.
Yeah. Okay. So then tell me, what would be your key messages to the listeners of the show? What would you want them to know?
I would say the first thing that I want them to know is everything outwardly starts inwardly. And
Mm.
by that, I mean, the lessons that I learned from this experience is if you're not taking care of yourself or advocating for yourself, you're not using your voice. We see it time and time again as individuals. We take care of other people. We'll stand up for other people. We'll speak for other people. But it all starts from within for you.
Mhm. Yeah, I like it. It's very much like when you take care of yourself, that's your own life force oxygen.
Exactly. It's like when you're on the plane and they're like, you need to.
The plane and the
Exactly.
oxygen mask. I love that example. Every client of mine knows I use it all the time. Best one ever.
Right.
And so for listeners, what that is it's the oxygen mask when you're traveling on a plane. If you're going to cross a body of water, the demonstration along with the seatbelts and all of that is that, if the mask drops down, you got to put it on yourself first before you help anyone else, like a loved one or a vulnerable person, whomever. And they tell you that if you don't put it on yourself first, you're putting other people at risk and yourself at risk. So you have to put it on yourself first. So that's the oxygen mask analogy. And it's so true. If you are replenished, if you have enough of what you need, you're giving from like the full cup. You have enough to give. But if you don't have enough, then you're spreading yourself too thin.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
100% right.
Mm-hmm.
And if you
That's
don't have enough, you don't know how to handle when things don't work out the way that you want it to, right? So when you've
yeah.
got to have tough conversations or you need to stand up for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, it's you're depleted, right? Like think about
Exactly.
your car battery. If it starts going all bonkers on you, it's going to start creating chaos in your vehicle, especially with the vehicles down. I talk about this because I had an experience recently where I got stuck inside my car, all because of a drained battery of something that had happened to my vehicle. So it's like the battery is slowly draining. I didn't know. And then different things start happening because the vehicle's controlled by some software. So like all kinds of stuff starts going bonkers.
Yep.
And it's creating chaos. So when you start getting depleted, you become in a state of vulnerability. So you don't know how it's going to impact you and what will show up and what won't show up and to what extent and intensity it will show up. So that's where the chaos ensues.
Exactly. And then the chaos is in your mind and it's in your inner critic, in your body.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Exactly. So, Tanya, I'm curious about what is that game changer inspiration for you that's close to you that really reflects your untold story? Would you say that you connected with an inspirational quote or a book or like a speaker, an event, like anything in your world that you connected with?
So there were two aspects that I really tried to embody. And it was a quote from Wayne Dyer, and it's when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Say it again.
When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
There's been a few guests on the show that have said that
Oh,
quote.
really?
It's so powerful. They're simple words that
Yep.
have such deep, deep meaning.
Yep. So that was definitely a game changer in how I looked at my life once I sort of overcame that period. And
Mm,
the other book for me is The Power of the Subconscious Mind by
mm,
Joseph Murphy.
yes, that's a good book. I've only been able to read a few parts of it, but I want to be able to go back and read the whole thing.
I think I have 3 copies, so if you ever want to borrow one, I'd be happy to lend it to you.
Mhm.
But I
Yes,
absolutely love that book.
yes. Well, the parts I did read were riveting, so it was really exciting. All right. And so, what's a cause or organization that's been impactful to you on your journey that you would like to give a shout out to?
So you mentioned it in the beginning. So we run a program called Slay Your Inner Critic. And in that program, we really, as coaches, we had to go through it ourselves to really embody what it would be like to take the course and work through your past experiences and your fear and your anxiety and all that great stuff. That's what I would plug as a great opportunity if you're in that space where I can't express myself, or I'm not being heard, or I'm not being seen. It's a great place to start.
Amazing. And how can people connect with you if they would like to? How are you findable?
So I can be found on my website, readynowlive.com, if you wanted to book a consultation or a meeting. And on Instagram, I'm at coach.tanyar.
Amazing. We're going to grab all your handles and have them be part of your show notes page. All right. Tanya, Miss Tanya, guess what?
What?
You, my dear, have just dared yourself to share. Congrats.
Well, thank you. This is
Yeah,
a quite a
you did it.
positive experience. So I do appreciate you for having this platform and allowing individuals to come and share their, as you say, their untold story.
And I'm glad to hear that you said it was a positive experience. And Tanya, I also want to tell you that I'm actually really grateful that you took this as an opportunity to step out of your comfort zone and raise your hand and say, okay, I'll do that. I haven't done a podcast before. Okay, cool, I'll do that. But I also want to acknowledge that today you have told a story that is vital for listeners to hear. And I'm touched that you took the time to share about what it is like to experience those exclusions in the workplace and learning about what microaggressions mean and how all of these experiences manifested in your life, and you being able to articulate how it completely changed your personality and how the suppression of your voice became so intense that it showed up as a health ailment. It was also really interesting to hear about how themes in your story have a generational parallel to it as well. So, thank you for your deep conversation and for all your daring and sharing.
Thank you so much for having me.
Amazing. And once again, Tanya, thank you for being part of Dare to Share Your Untold Story and helping to be a voice in breaking down the barriers of mental stigma. To all of our listeners, if you like what you've been hearing on this podcast and you want to be part of breaking down barriers of mental stigma, I invite you to go wherever you are listening to the episode and hit subscribe. Leave us a comment or a review of the episode and maybe how you relate to it. To learn more about what we offer, visit www.daretoheal.co. And if you are feeling ready and brave to share, please submit your story by visiting www.daretoshare.co. Thanks for joining in.